beyond this theoretical framework and foundation that you seem to have. I mean, exceptions prove the rules, let's face it. As well, the fact that you've sitting down, went through the work of preparation for the certification, as well did the whole paperwork, learned for that one, tells me here's a person that had quite some level of focus to see this through. It's a guarantee that this is a good project manager. I want to be very clear. But these are indicators that make the probability that you are a project manager that knows his or her way around is significantly higher.
Hi, this is your project management cowboy. We've got a really great guest, as always, on our podcast. I've got the privilege of having Dirk Withake with us here today. He'll introduce himself in just a little bit. Welcome on board.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
I'll do a short introduction. Dirk is the new PMI Chapter President for Austria.
Not that new anymore, but yes.
Yes. And I have a little bit of history with the PMI Chapter Austria, so it's a real privilege to have you on board. That's going to be one of the topics we're going to kind of entertain. I'd like to kind of go through with him. Why would anybody want to become a chapter president? What's your function?
Good question.
What is your vision? What can we look forward to? So that's one of the things we're going to take a look at. The other thing is, and we're going to put it in. You'll see it then in the thumbnail that you see for this podcast. You'll see the long list of titles that Dirk has. Okay, I think you mentioned, you call it the exotic list of
the list of exotic certifications.
Yes. He's got the scheduling, the risk, which is it's not bad. You know, I would you from your level, you're much beyond that. But what I thought was really, really interesting, because I'm a big fan of these certifications, but they are exotic in the sense that you don't see them as often as I think we should. There's a number of reasons for that. Maybe we could talk about that. You've got the PgMP. Hats off. I think that's amazing. Okay.
That's one.
I think that's. But we should. What I also want to do is I don't want to just talk about the situation of certification in the world, but I'd want to get your personal kind of experience. What needs to happen in certification? Because I think there needs to be some improvement there as well. There's an influx of certifications. Some of them come, some of them go. Some of them are here to stay. How can we improve some of them? And then you have the ultimate from PMI, which is the PfMP, which is a great one. I also wish that more people would have that. I think probably the criteria to apply for it is difficult. And the other thing is, a lot of portfolio managers, if they have the title, they say, what do I need a certification? But maybe that'll change in the future. So that's the second topic that I want to talk about. And then the primary reason why we have guests on this podcast is you're a PM cowboy in your own right.
Okay.
Maybe I need to qualify that.
Please do so.
I have the trademark on PM Cowboy, but it's an open source public domain concept. It means anybody who is a seasoned veteran in project portfolio, program management, PMOs, and doesn't have a hard time talking directly and honestly about that.
I hope I can live up to
so
that.
I think you'll fall right into that category. So I'd like to pick your brain. You work for an outstanding Austrian company that you can talk about a little bit. I hope. And if you can kind of to give our viewers, who are kind of our community of practice, that's the term we use at PMI as well, kind of some insights. What is your company doing with project, program, and portfolio management that maybe other companies should be doing as well, or as a point of reference? What we always do is, at the beginning of our podcast, we ask our guests to introduce themselves, because when I watch podcasts, I always want to know who's the person that's sitting there talking, so that people know your pedigree, they know your passion, what's your background, what entitles you to make some of the valuable statements that you're still going to make. Okay? So we call it the passion journey. Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Journey. So my passion journey starts in Germany. So we're in Austria, we're in Vienna. And we're talking English, so you won't see this. But if I would be talking German now to you, everybody in Austria would know within probably 2 sentences, this is not a born Viennese, this is not a born Austrian, this is a German. Hey, though I lived for 25 years in Austria, somehow it hasn't rubbed off on me. Don't know why. I haven't forced it. That is not my style either. It comes Though, honestly speaking, when I come home to Germany,
they say, "Are you from Austria?"
I almost said that one. So you see, I'm in between in a way. But then when I go back to my hometown, that's Bochum. That's I'm from the Ruhr region, steel and coal, and I start to speak there. They go like, "Hey, can you please speak proper German?" So I'm neither here nor there in a way, but that's fine. Love it here. Again, I grew up in the Ruhr region, Bochum, in Western Germany, relatively close to the Dutch border. Grew up there, school, university as well.
What did you study at university?
Business administration and economics, Wirtschaftswissenschaft, as they call it. So it's a combination of both. With in the second part, basically marketing. So we have something to share there as well.
Two bullshit artists.
And informatics.
Okay. So, something serious. Okay.
So that included as well a 1 year stint with Erasmus in Spain and Madrid.
Oh, wow.
Where I met a very nice Austrian lady.
Cherchez la femme.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and at the end of when we both graduated, the selection was, say, Germany or Austria. And for me, it was clear. I love my hometown. I love my home region. It was clear I would leave.
Yeah.
I'm always love to go back for a week or so, but so it was easy for me at the time to then, after graduating in 98 to find a job here in Vienna. So I started Henkel detergent in the 3rd district at the plant there as an SAP specialist. Did SAP implementations first, the famous at the time very common R2 to R3.
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten those names.
Transition projects for our first Vienna plant, then ESAS. The Henkel Austria facility was as well the headquarters for Central Eastern Europe. So we did this as well. In all the different countries there, Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, what have you. That was all nice. And after 2 years, I said, you know what, I want to do an expatriate thing, because that was as well part of what they told me at the beginning. Hey, you could do that one with Henkel. And so they said, hey, so you want to do Hungary, or do you want to do...
It's like right next door.
Czech Republic. I said, I would like to travel a little farther. And so at the end, I landed a gig in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh,
so
wow.
for instance, we're gonna do US. I said, thumbs up.
Yeah.
Just married, so I said, okay. Starting in 2000, I said, where exactly in the US? And so usually you hope for the usual suspects.
Yeah.
And they go like, Cincinnati, Ohio. And you're like, okay.
Stop bad.
Let's Google that one.
Yeah.
And I loved it there. But you drive into town, and there's this sign on the road when you enter the town, and like most family-friendly town in the US. And you go like, okay. So as just my wife and I at the time were like, family-friendly means no big fun here, obviously. Yeah. And I think Mark Twain had this statement like, if the world ends, Cincinnati will find out 2 years later or something like along that line. Yeah. Don't know the exact quote. So, we had a great time there, but it was a family-friendly city. So we said, you know what, we have to start a family here.
It's not the highlight of the United States, but it's nice.
We had a great time. And I have to say as well, part of my job was going to different facilities we had, mainly on the East Coast, but it was South Carolina. It was Chicago, close to Chicago, in a town, Kankakee.
Now, were you working? When you were? Was it still working on SAP projects back then? Or?
No, I was at that time transitioning from the SAP specialist role into project management by accident. A classic one. Yeah. Hey, we're lacking a project manager here. Why don't you? I said, you know what? Maybe it doesn't look too bad on the resume. Maybe I should give it a try. And so I started that one, and that was first, as almost every accidental project manager. Hey, how hard can it be? Luckily, I read some books and had kind of this 2-day.
You read the typical Kurtzner books and.
No, not even that one. I kind of project management for dummies, and they gave me this.
Tom DeMarco.
Yeah, Franklin Covey 2-day project management course, which was horrible. Yeah. But anyways, my apologies to Franklin Covey, but that was the way it was at the time, and still found it interesting to have a wider influence and to make things happen, essentially, instead of just making it happen myself, in a way. And it kind of brought me as well back a little bit to my business administration, general management training I had at university. So I said, that is nice. Did a lot of data warehouse work, SAP work at the time, projects, liked it. Returned them back after 2 years to Austria. It was the end of the expatriate time, which was great years, best years of my life, I would say. Seen a lot of the US, so loved the city. And my son was born there, so he's an American.
American citizen, yeah.
Yes, he is. And joined then the classic engineers problem. You return from your time overseas and they go like, you're back.
Now what?
You can do the same thing again as when you left. I said, like, that wasn't the intention here. So then I said, Henkel, we had a good time, but and I joined CSC.
Okay.
So I said, I do my 2 years of consulting.
CSC, yes.
I said, so I got to do it. I had colleagues there, so I said, on 2 years of consulting. I have that on the resume. Turned out to be 14 years after all. And there I got a really thorough project management training, really thorough.
Didn't CSC also buy one of the enterprise project management software tools?
No, not really. No.
I thought they did. Okay.
No. No, they were always agnostic to that one. But as this was at the time a company of 100,000 employees with a very strong American footprint, especially, they had really excellent project management curriculum, excellent, better than anything I've seen anywhere else.
I'm actually familiar with some of the project management training materials that they had.
Okay. Very good. So, I mean, they had as well a framework that was built on the knowledge they've gained through decades of working, especially in U.S. government stuff, NASA, Alphabet Soup, and what have you. So that was excellent. So there I really got a solid grounding in project management with excellent training. Went through the whole curriculum there and did from that point onwards. And that was at the beginning very much. I mean, the first project I was still dabbling a little bit into SAP consultant role, but then there comes this point in the career where you say, is project management a part-time job or is this now your job? And so I decided to jump in with both feet, and from that point onwards, I've never regretted that decision.
Familiar. Sounds familiar.
And that was basically the point where I said, I'm not anymore an SAP consultant, moonlighting as a project manager. I'm a project manager.
Good for you.
Yeah, indeed. Was never regretted that decision. And as usual, you start with project management, smaller projects, bigger projects. And then I had the luck to basically stumble over distressed projects. So there were some distressed projects with clients, and they said, we need someone who takes care of that one. And at that point I said, you know what, why not? So, and I basically built a reputation at the time for salvaging distressed projects. It's a stressful job. Probably you've done that as well along your career. But what I loved about that one, you're much more flexible. You can do much more outside established processes and rules, what have you. Everyone's just happy there is some guy or gal who's trying to take care of it. And yes, they will break some rules. But thank God they're taking care of that. And so yes, your role is to be a pain sponge in a way. To fix and get it done. And you have to be comfortable to make some rules, break some rules.
It's always I always say the best rule breakers are the ones who understand the rules best.
First you make the rules, and occasionally you break them.
You need to know them and know where they're bendable, where you can adapt them, which is I think part of what the PMBOK is also trying to do with its adaptability.
Absolutely. But I think you have to as well understand when you break the rules, you break them consciously. You are aware that you've just broken a rule, and you're not doing it willy-nilly. Or that you then find out in hindsight it just broke a pretty important rule, and then you feel down the road the payback. So that is obviously always a risky thing because things can go sideways really, and not you might screw it up, and it might be screwed up. It is outside your capabilities because maybe the product you're working with or the team you're working with is just not capable, or it's just one bridge too far.
Now, were you an employee when you took over these distressed projects?
Usually I was basically parachuted in as a hired gun to the
freelancer.
Interim. Interim.
Yeah.
Usually, 1-2 things I did as well, where CC was a little bit in the mix itself, but usually I was brought in as a kind of firefighter. And I had the luck that I had 2 bigger organizations that kind of where I was thrown in for one gig. Essentially said, you know what, we have more of these kind. Why don't you stay around and basically become our firefighter of choice? And then
it sounds fun. Sounds stressful, but it sounds fun.
Yeah. Because you can make contacts. You go places you usually wouldn't go.
And you can say things in a tone that usually most people who are in the line organization never have the benefit of being able to say,
and other people have to swallow it.
Yeah.
So I had the luck to do this for actually 3 years for a huge international oil and gas company based in Britain. That was for a while all over Europe, sorting things out. Awesome. And then a little bit later, through a collaboration between a bigger high-tech company from Japan and a bigger entertainment conglomerate from California.
Okay.
And they found the liking of that one, the House of Mouse. And did that one for 2 years.
Okay, wow. You've really
out of England.
Illustrious background. Let me ask you a question. In your freelance, in your powerful freelance role, did you have an executive mentor or sponsor?
Not really.
How did you manage to?
No, I mean within CSC.
Yeah.
I mean,
also within CSC, but not with the client.
Yeah, with the client usually I had one basically. Was the CTO or the CIO.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
And essentially, you're then the emissary. Everyone knows the guy talks to the CXO, whatever that is, and better aligned with that person. So it's borrowed power.
The reason I ask this is one of my classical, when I coach people, one of the first questions I love to ask them. I said, "Who's your sponsor?" And most people look at me like, "What the hell is a sponsor?"
Yeah. But it's important to understand, and that is sometimes where which people mistake. It's borrowed power, it's borrowed influence.
Yeah, you've got a letter, a charter means you have you basically have a sanctus of the powers that be, and they know when people say, "Who the hell are you?" You say, "Here, this is."
But it needs to understand, because some people at the end think it's themselves, and that is not the case. You are an emissary. You have borrowed power essentially,
and you have borrowed time.
Yeah, borrowed time as well. Yeah. And there's a moment when this is being retracted, and I've seen a lot of people then falling a little bit into the abyss, saying, "Hey, what's going? Nobody's taking my calls anymore. Nobody's listening to me anymore. What just happened?"
I've experienced that a couple of times.
But I think I understood relatively early on. That this is the nature of the game.
You have to move with the tide.
Yes, and there's a moment when you move into an organization where you have the power and where you're the new rake basically that's being used to achieve certain outcomes, but as well there comes a point of time where your capabilities are exhausted and where you need to understand they need someone fresh now. Again, something different.
I think it's a very, very honest thing. I also think that I think if you've got good principles, if you really work according to your principles, say, listen, I want to make a difference, I want to have a long-term impact. I think it's really, really important to also understand this retraction, also withdrawing yourself, taking yourself. If you've been a political play ball for a long enough time, sometimes you have to take yourself out of the equation so that the mission can continue.
Right.
And people will acknowledge, thank you for your time, but if you're willing to take a step back, then we can take it to the next level.
And the thing is that if you work for an organization for 2 years or so, there's a tendency, and it's a completely human tendency to go native in a way, basically.
I don't think that term, go native,
that then you're seen as well as a native, and you don't have this, he's a bit outside or she's a bit outside the power structures and can make, that fades away. And that is basically as well where I've usually approached then the sponsors that, you know what, I think I need to sharpen the axe again somewhere else. And if you want to have me back maybe in 2 years, we can have that conversation. But I think my time here in this organization.
That's refreshing that you have that strategic understanding. So you've got a senior management position, which I always love when I get to talk to senior managers. Some people say, well, so you're away from project management. Do you see it that way?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So my business unit runs projects, a little bit of maintenance as well, but we have structured this as well as a project. Yes, there's this ongoing conversation. Is maintenance a project or not? Putting this aside for a moment.
That's a long one. We don't have to break that.
Yeah, but it's almost a philosophical one. But so I have all these projects under me, and I've structured these into programs and portfolios. So essentially, I run my business unit with the principles of portfolio management. So you could call me as well portfolio manager in a way. So the principles I do apply. I have a different title, but essentially I have the bundle of.
Du hast sicher schon mal Volleyball gespielt, oder?
Langes her.
Langes her. Aber du kennst das Prinzip, man soll ja den Ball, wenn man ihn entgegennimmt, nicht gleich wieder zurück, aber man bridgt ihn, damit er kontrolliert und der nächste smasht. Und ich habe gerade gebridgt und du hast gesmasht. Einer der heißen Themen, wir haben es auch vor dem... we're speaking German, we have to go back to English, sorry.
Ja.
Sorry about that. Jetzt können wir beides. So you've played volleyball, I'm sure, in the past.
Long time ago.
And the principle of volleyball is you're not supposed to receive the ball and whack it back. That's kind of uncontrolled. The idea is that you're supposed to hit it at least 2, if not 3 times. And you set the ball and one person smashes it. I set the ball with my question about your business unit leadership, and you smashed it because one of the things we talked before we started this podcast, we were talking about this state of PMO and what are some of the reasons why PMOs are struggling, although they shouldn't. And one of the things I talked about that I think is one of the crucial issues is there is still insufficient understanding amongst executives or a cognizant awareness among executives and senior management of the role and value of project, program, and portfolio management, and what their role is in it.
And the distinction between the 3 of them.
And I think I think the solution, I think PMI is also a big fan of this, that it should become a criteria for board members in the future that they have project and program experience, and you have it. But it's one thing to have it and then still live it after. And you're basically saying, which I find it highly admirable, take yourself an example on Dirk, is once you've learned something good, why not use it? Because now you're at a much higher level, but you're still a key player in the overall, what PMI likes to call OPM. Nobody understands what the hell that is, operational project management. You said, a business unit is like its own company. We have I don't know if you call it a wallet or a portfolio, a sub-portfolio. You have your own portfolio. You have your own different styles of projects. Some of them internal, some of them external, some of them easy, some of them complex. So you use the DNA, the framework, the understanding that you've achieved in your many, many years in there. And does it make a difference?
I hope so. I mean, no, I would say, we are successful. Good. I can say that one. We're very successful over the last years. We've grown and financials are all good. So, and we are especially in stable mode. So we are not firefighting. Every project, every program has once in a while a situation that needs to be taken care of. But we've stabilized this and we have proper processes in place on the project, on the program, and portfolio level. And the important thing for me as well now, sitting on the portfolio level, that I understand the implication that the different projects and programs have on the portfolio level. For example, the whole thing of risk coming together on the portfolio level, how they interact with each other, or as well the proactive management of risk, that risk is not inherently bad, that as well try to weigh my portfolio saying, okay, these are stable things very well, all good, but I need to inject as well at the right point of time with the right amount, a certain element of risk here to leverage as well down the road with a full understanding a risk is a risk, and sometimes you'll get the payoff and sometimes you don't.
You're speaking like a true commander-in-chief of your business unit, and one of the magic processes in the PMBOK is the concept of integration, which sounds great. Nobody knows what the hell it means. We do. It basically means integration is the magical process of understanding that there's a bunch of different facets in your management portfolio that need to be managed. Risk has an impact on quality. Quality has an impact. The other thing is that I think a lot of executives and senior managers don't understand that when we talk about portfolios, people think, we're talking about project portfolios. But for me, portfolio management is what I call the holy trinity of portfolios. Executives are interested in financial portfolios, but since you're not a bank and don't give out loans, the only way to multiply your value is to invest it into project portfolios, which create product portfolios, and that's the cycle of portfolio. And that's basically what you're saying is you use these principles because they help you. They're like a dashboard that gives you an indication of where you're going. Are you going in the right direction? What decisions do I need to make? What issues? Let me ask you a question, and I'm not expecting you to give me the exact answer, but I'm sure with a couple pushes of the button you'd be. I love to tickle executives when I get to talk to them. I say, so you do portfolio management? And some of them say yes, and they go, so how many projects do you have in your portfolio? Could you tell me if you looked in your laptop?
27. I don't need to do
okay,
that.
Good. He's on top of things, right? So
know your numbers.
Yeah. Do you go through discovery and evaluation for your projects?
We have long-term projects. So one of the nature is usually we have very long-term projects.
Okay. How
long? Our main program, for example, is not 20 years old.
Okay, so almost like pharmaceutical projects, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they are programs. So within these programs, there are projects. Yeah. So depending on what nomenclature you take, you can call some of them. Is it a project?
It's semantics,
but essentially, it is multiple streams of work and different kinds of work that come together to deliver a value to the organization and to the client that is bigger than a single project could do. So program.
Standard question I would ask an executive. So do you select your project managers according to a criteria when assigning them to projects?
Yeah.
Do you have an internal program capability program?
We do have that.
Do you have a career path for project managers?
Yes, we do have.
See? Take yourself an example.
Well, that is not me. That is the overall organization.
But you carry your end of it. Okay. Yes. Let's talk about your certifications because we mentioned them beforehand. You have two certifications. Two certifications that I probably would have tried to get myself, but the application process is such a pain in the butt. And
on purpose.
Yeah, I know. But the purpose of a certification is to assign those people who know what to do. To designate them. And if you're a freelance consultant like me, it's kind of difficult with all my different client projects to put a history line there together. But I'm a big supporter of program management and portfolio management. I think it's the future of project management because you can't perceive value unless there's some kind of receptor built into the system that if it's not connected. You have both the PgMP and the PfMP. Yes, what is your take on those two categories, program management and portfolio management? The reason I ask this is if you look at the PMBOK, it's constantly growing, although now they split it up to make it thinner again, but whatever.
Wait for it. Yeah. 8th edition coming up.
Yeah, okay. I hope the 8th edition is better than the last one. No, just a comment on the side.
You'll see.
I'm looking forward to it. Did you participate in it? He can't say. So he could tell me, but he'd have to kill me afterwards. But one thing that keeps annoying me is if you look at the standard for program management, look at the standard for, it looks like a restaurant menu. It's about this thin. What's up with that?
It's getting better. I think it's still an overview. Yeah. So I've been involved as a reviewer of the last iteration of the program management standard. It's always a little bit of a trade-off, obviously. I think it has improved. Still, there are things, obviously, as well, with the overall timeline in the process. that is quite extensive. You have to find some middle ground. And I've been involved multiple times. Instance, I've been as well in the writing team of the 6th edition PMBOK, for example, on communication stakeholder management, by the way.
Good.
It's, I think, with the 6th edition, I was part of that one, so I can talk. That became a doorstopper. That became a little bit too heavy on all purpose. The 7th edition, I think not everybody, a lot of people understand where they wanted to go, more principles-based, but I think the pendulum swung a little bit too much into the other direction. And
I think every PMBOK has provided some value. I think my only beef with the 7th edition is, PMI rides, whether they believe it or not, PMI is only PMI because of the people that are involved with it.
Absolutely.
It's this old analogy, a hospital is not the facility, it's the people that work in it. Okay.
Well, I think they understand that one. That was my impression.
And I don't think there was any ill will, and I think I sense and empathize with what they were trying to do. And I must say that the PMBOK itself, the first couple chapters are much more fluid to read. They're conceptually, because one of the biggest problems with the PMBOK has always been it's been a bestseller in 12 or 14 different languages, but never really fun to read because it was iterative and lots of bullet points and stuff like that. But valuable if you knew how to read it or how to dissect it.
Selectively. But as a whole thing, that put you
So I think that the new PMBOK tried to do that. And I also understand how they kind of went to the project management life cycle because they felt that was more in tune with the workflow than dealing it with on individual chapters. But I think people are used to tradition to a certain extent. I think that's part of the change resistance. Also, and then from an educational perspective, it was. From a training perspective, I thought it was easier to train certain things if they were done in clusters. Okay, that doesn't mean that I think that the 7th is a fiasco. It's far from it. I think it was a valiant attempt. I'll be interested. When is the 8th one coming out?
In a few months. At the moment, in January. Okay. I'm not 100% sure if it has closed. The draft review period happened. I think it's not closed. Would need to double check that one. Yeah. But essentially, what you can see in the draft review period is that I think the switch, the change that happened from 6th to 7th edition is basically taking back halfway, so that some middle ground between this, not to come back to. Is
he going back to one book, hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they including the Agile thing as well? Because there was that booklet. It was kind of like the stepchild.
If you read that one in the draft, yes.
Yeah.
Still, what you see as well in the comments, obviously, and if you look at LinkedIn, you find as well a number of threads on that one. You can never satisfy everyone.
No, you can't. It's a work in progress, and you've always got a trade-off.
There are the construction guys that go like, "Hey, you have forgotten about us." It's all
that's the death of the SIGs. Yeah, the special interest groups was a big
thing.
Then
the IT guys like, "Oh, you've gone way too much into the construction side of things." That's the usual thing. Yeah. So you cannot make it fit 100% for everyone. That is understood. I think as well. What I've seen PMI over the last is try to get a little bit more to what specific. Types of project with, for example, which they've launched, I think now 1.5 years ago, give or take, the special certification for construction project management, this CP thing.
Yeah, there used to be that special interest group, which the PMI discontinued for some reason.
And so they're trying to do something around that one, acknowledging that there are certain types of project which indeed run a little bit different.
Are you familiar with Oliver Lehmann from Munich?
No, I'm not.
I'll have to introduce him to you. He's been on my podcast twice. Okay. He has an interesting take. He's an old Urgestein, as we say in German, an old icon of PMI and PMI thinking. Been around for a long, long time. Very smart guy. He has an interesting new take, something that we've always been aware of, but we've kind of ignored it. We always know that it's in the background, but we rarely address it. The big difference between internal and external projects. And he's actually trying to given it a vocabulary he calls external project, he calls it project business management, because it has a business case behind it, and it has a margin and all that kind of stuff. Is any of that in the new PMBOK as far as you know? Are there any other additions or topics?
Well, what they tried is when you read the draft is as well to introduce elements of disciplined agile ways of working. aspects into that one. And that is my personal opinion. That is not an official statement. I think that has gone reasonably well. This whole choose your ways of working aspect has been introduced, that there's not just one road that leads to Rome, but there could be
I think that's a hot topic. I think that's a hot topic because I'm just in the process of developing a maturity model assessment for a client. Because they wanted a generic one, and I would say the very first level of and you said we begin as autodidacts. I call it anarchic agility. You do it any which way, you know.
Hope it works.
That's actually a way of working, and I think on an elemental level, every project team on a really micro level, they need to have their autonomy and their freedom of how to do it, especially since they have the technical background. But if we're talking on a macro or meso level, I think the term way of working can be misconstrued, because I think common language and common process, there should be on that level, there should be some kind of uniformity, because there's a benefit to uniformity.
Fair point, though. The underlying thought I like, because a lot of project management literature that you read, and I think PMBOK sometimes said it well, that thing, there's one way to go about
the prescriptive,
things,
it has
prescriptive
to be.
way.
Yeah.
And I think what I like about these ways of working, we can have the conversation if the term is the best one that could be true. But I think, folks, there's not just one road that leads to Rome. There are multiple ways.
Especially with this conversation about agile, hybrid, or a thing.
Exactly. And then say, okay, you have the choice. You have to be first aware what options have you available, and not just go, I go this direction, I go either.
What kind of project am I working on, right? Yeah. So
and this
is it complicated or complex, or is it a new product development, or is it something? Is a standard mill?
Because quite often I hear we need to tailor projects. Correct statement. Don't get me wrong. Or tailor programs or even portfolios, or the processes behind that one. All good. But a lot of people go like, okay, I have now my set of stuff that I want to do, and I have my scissors, and I go like, what do I do now? I go like, and just accidentally find the right one, or do I first recognize what are the options, what is on my plate, and then as well have a framework how I then select under which criteria what is the most appropriate thing to do. And to me, as well, you probably have seen, PMI has basically bought the Agile Alliance at the beginning of the year, which I support. I think it's a good move. There is a lot of chatter. If you look at the usual channels, obviously, people love it, people don't love it.
People don't. I think it's a smart move.
And to me, this whole thing, either you're agile or you're my expectation when I hire a project manager, or if I'm introducing a project manager, my expectation, there's no discussion even. They need to know both. In today's world, if you cannot do both, or as well have solid understanding how to build a hybrid approach that fits the context you're operating in, you're not a capable project manager. I'm sorry.
You're speaking my language. Let me throw this at you and see if you would agree with me. I'm going to rephrase it. I've got a whole library full of Agile. I'm also a big fan of Lean. I think Lean is, for me, much more appealing than the Agile thing. I think Agile is valuable. But when I first read the first books on Agile, these do it twice as fast and half the time bullshit. The first thing I did when I read it is I agree with you. Everything they're saying in here is legitimate issues that we face in project management, but they're not new. That was my first impression. So I was like, they're doubling down on the very fact that we often don't have sponsors in project management, that there's not a continual iteration, that the line organization and the matrix organization kind of throws the problem over the fence and then comes around at the end of the project. That's bullshit. It needs to be iterated, especially if it's complex and you can't define the requirements up front. You can't just vaguely leave the requirements in the room and then be dissatisfied towards the end. It's an ongoing process. Absolutely. And there's a trade-off factor and minimum viable product and the concept of defining what kind of meetings we have, that we don't have too many of them, but we have the right one. Business value, all of this 100%. I read that and I said, but and then as I said in German, I was like, but I thought this was common knowledge for project managers. But I think it was good that they doubled down. And I think what happens is the new generation has to embrace it and rephrase it and fight for it. I think it's great. Yeah. So my impression after I read it is I looked at the tool and the framework of it, and I said, I felt I had the aha experience of an autodidact. I said, I've been doing this since the beginning of time. Maybe because I originally came from operations. I was a line manager, and I was deeply, deeply involved in operations. And project management is classical project management is a great framework for initiation and planning. Right? It's a great dynamic interchange.
Closing maybe as well.
And closing as well, right? So for validation. And I think it gives it a good, begin to end structure. And I think the whole business analyst thing is, if it's a complex project, is an additional value to take a look at. But hands down, I think the biggest mistake of the waterfall methodology is the concept that project management is 90% initiation and planning, which is bullshit.
Operation.
Execution is the real project management. Yeah. Everything else is just side dishes. Yeah. And hands down, so I think the superior method for initiation and planning, I don't care what Agile is waterfall. As far as you can predict anything, right? But when it comes to the open end, what you don't know, the unknown, and when it comes to execution, the hands down superior methodology is Agile. So for me, it was never a question. Just like you said, a project manager needs to know when they look in their toolbox, which tool do I need for which situation? And I think the whole discussion of you guys do project management and that's outdated, and we do Agile and that's a new lifestyle and a new religion and a new cult. That's BS.
I have no time for you.
No, it's no time. What I will say though, and because I've had Roy Schilling on my podcast, who's an Agile expert, and I love him because he'll take my banter, but he'll add something from his perspective. I think what we need to remember, especially when we're looking at Kanban, there is a certain element, and that's where also the discipline Agile, which you know better than me because you're certified, is the discipline Agile entertains this crossover. You also mentioned how maintenance is often not seen as project management, but if your organization sees a value in considering it part of your project lifecycle from the disciplined Agile perspective, if you're going to create a team, why dissolve the team? Keep it going because you have product cycle. That makes sense, right? So I think we just need to be adaptive or fluid in our understanding. There's different paints for different situations. Let me ask you another question. So, did you see the PgMP and the PfMP as a valuable certification for you?
Yes.
Yeah. What would you tell any viewers who are considering additional certification? Because I find there's too few people out there that have it. What would you tell them to kind of motivate them?
If you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, this is the way to go. I mean, the PMP for experienced project managers is nowadays an expectation, either the PMP or the equivalent from IPMA or Prince too.
You're being kind.
Hey, there are multiple flavors in the world, and yes, I'm the PMI Austria Chapter President, but
I agree with you.
There's a world.
But you don't have PMI tattooed on your forehead. You have a bleeding heart for PMI, but we acknowledge that the others do good work as well.
True indeed. So the PMP is an expectation. And if a project manager comes to me with a certain set of experience and does not have such a certification, I go like, why is
Are you committed to your discipline?
Yeah. And then they offer, why is it important? I've done a lot of projects. I say, fair point. And I know this when I started SAP work very early on. Yeah. There was a statement, there are good SAP consultants and they're certified SAP consultants. Because the thing was, basically, if you're a good consultant, you have so much work, you don't have time for certification. Well, to me, the purpose of certification is that you take a step back and ensure that you do not just have the practical experience, which you might have, but as well can under a basis of a theoretical framework. Yes. How to fit the things you're doing, and that might have just accidentally you found the right way to working, but that you understand this is one way of work, because otherwise you're a one-shot pony.
And projects come in different sizes and different couleurs, and I think it's important to have a full overview, although the PMBOK doesn't claim to have the full overview, but a fairly comprehensive overview of what's possible.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had the benefit very early on to be in such a large project, 300 million euro project, that we did the whole PMBOK, frontwards and backwards. But not everybody has that opportunity, and you need to be, as you move forward in your career, you need to know the basic. And I think what's also important, the greatest value of the PMBOK, it's a benchmark to see what do I know, what can I improve. Do we have common language? Yeah. I once talked to a senior vice president from IBM who had PMP on her business card, and she was senior vice president. I said, I'm really impressed that you put your PMP in. She says, I love to do it. So it's because when I interact with people in my organization or outside my organization, they get my business card, they know what language I speak. And if I see it on their business card, I can shortcut the conversation because it just accelerates my possibility of vocabulary and communication.
And it shows me you have at least some exposure.
A rudimentary framework understanding of what we're talking about.
And not like, let's talk about stakeholder management, and the other person goes like,
what? Yeah.
And it's kind of a signal beyond this theoretical framework and foundation that you seem to have. I mean, exceptions prove the rules, let's face it. As well, the fact that you've sitting down, went through the work of preparation for the certification, as well did the whole paperwork, learned for that one, tells me here's a person that had quite some level of focus to see this through.
Yeah.
It's a guarantee that this is a good project manager. I want to be very clear. But these are indicators that make the probability that you are a project manager that knows his or her way around is significantly higher. So there's a increased probability. But let's face it as well, there are more than 1 million PMPs out there in the world. This is not something where you really set yourself apart from your cohort.
Yeah. Well, although there's the population of the world is substantially larger, so 1 million sounds like a lot, but in the big picture of things,
But if you're talking serious. Yeah. So the reason why I did my PMP in 2007, and in 2014 I decided to go for the PgMP because I was running programs, and for me it was a bit as well. I said, I need as well to improve my foundation and knowledge here, because I do a lot of things, but I know there's some stuff out there that probably I don't know in that field. And
I think you have to have that humility. Yeah, you can be a great expert, but I mean, what harm is it? Instead, okay, well, let benchmark then. It's actually let's compare ourselves to the gold standard and say and I think this is also part of the cognitive process. There's certain things when I come to the knowledge area in the PMBOK, and I kind of roll my eyes and go, I know this, and I know the next thing, right? Which is fine. Then volunteer for the next time they revise the PMBOK and stop whining, right? For me, the PMBOK opened up my eyes and gave me vocabulary for things. A classical example is the topic of configuration management, right? Most people don't know what configuration management is. Or you said you were involved in the stakeholder. I remember the term, the first time I saw it, a salience model. Yeah. Right? So, I'd never heard of that before, and I mean, I understood it's a 3-dimensional matrix, right? For those of you who are confused. This is the value, and we're a community of practice, and I think part of our responsibility is to share our knowledge actively, and to be confident in what we know, but also be humble enough to say, listen, I don't know everything. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know if you've had this experience when you were consulting. I learn as much from the people I consult than, and
you carry with you to the next one.
Absolutely. So let me ask you another question. I've kind of limited my certifications, although I got a wish list of things I want to go through. It's just always a question of time. I just sometimes find it better, because my number one reason why certification is interesting is for learning purposes. Okay, I think that should be your motivation, is to learn something. But there's other ways to learn as well. And then the second one, I think that where the payback is the reputation or the validation that you have for your curriculum vitae.
Right, but you need to understand that there's a diminishing return on that one.
Yes. Yeah, especially in Europe. It's not like in the United States where you say, I got a PMP and I'm going to get a 20% salary increase.
So I think the PMP, the first motivation should be education, validation. But you were going to say something about the validation part?
Right. Again, the PgMP, if you do a certification, and no matter which certification, it needs to be a substantial certification. I get to the topic maybe a little bit later. Where you're in front of your cohort, of your peers, that gives you an edge career-wise. And I've seen that one with the PgMP, where this was, when I did that one, at the time I did it, accelerated my career tremendously. And I wouldn't be, I can say, a business unit director nowadays, and since 8 years, if I wouldn't have done that one. That set me on that track.
Yeah.
What you need to understand as well, further on, certification, if you do them, and I've decided to pursue a number of them, the boost to your career or to your salary is not that big anymore. So, but then
it's more of an American tradition,
but it becomes more about the learning aspect. For me, basically, I like to learn towards a goal. So just reading 7 books on the topic, I can do that one, but I prefer to have something waiting there for me where I can save. And that is why I've chosen to do it that way. Again, that was the PgMP was as well about learning, beefing up my program management knowledge, had an impact on the career. But to follow the later certification, I've essentially done 8 certification 2 years then during COVID.
Yeah, well, you use the time.
Yeah, to me it was basically, at the time I was turning 50, and I realized at the point my excellent training that I received in project management, which I'd received through CSC at the time, was essentially 15 years old.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really full-fledged project management training since then. I said, you know what, just expecting that everything is just as it used to be is probably not realistic.
Should I tell you something that happened to me recently? And this is kind of, it kind of says what you're saying in a different way. I do a training for a number of large reputable companies. One of the companies that you worked before, a German company with 3 letters, I do the training for their project management, SAP, I will mention them. Love SAP, great company, great employees. I recently had a guy who was in my course, and he says, you probably don't remember me, but I've been in your course before. And I go, really? I go, you look familiar. And he goes, yeah, I've been in your course 3 times.
Okay.
And it's a 5-day online course. And I'm like, why? I said, am I that good? I don't think I'm that good. I can't imagine anybody want to listen to me.
Fan,
that's a diehard fan. And he says, well, it's the easiest way for me to get my PDUs.
Okay.
And he goes, yeah. And this is what I loved about him. This guy is anytime my equal when it comes to pragmatic application of project management, especially when you say you measure it according to what his needs are, right? I might be able to manage a couple different industry projects better than him, but he manages his SAP project light years from what I could do. But what I loved about it, and this is something that I've learned from people who have lots of experience, I think there's a certain, once again, confidence, but humility in the concepts. Is I know a lot, and I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to stand up for what I know. But I don't mind refresh things. I don't mind. You notice this when you go to a conference. You'll stand there and you'll talk with people, and you'll talk about foundational concepts. And you might say, well, don't you get tired of it? The answer is no, because you can get new perspective. You kind of renew your faith. You add facets to it, and it's kind of like layers and layers of quality that are put on top of it. So let me talk about, because you're a good candidate for this, since you have so many certifications. In the beginning of every year, I kind of look what their certifications or their books. There's a long wish list, and I have a very large library. One of the things I've noticed, there's been a big influx on certification, and the new agile organizations have brought a new flavor and a new approach to certification, which is interesting and new. I got my CSM, which is really a low-level certification, but it was also, I was impressed in many ways, but I was also not impressed in other ways, and that's why I haven't gone any further in there. I think there's there's so many certifications out there that it's kind of difficult to know anymore what's of value. And I'm going to speak very bluntly in the favor of our viewers and people who are not yet committed to an association. They can't tell the difference between IPMA or PMI or ABC or DEF. They don't know it. If they don't have the years of experience or association with it, it doesn't mean anything to us, to them, right? So I think the legitimate question that a lot of people have when they talk about which one is good, we have history. So I'll talk up the classical 4. I'll say PMI has the greatest brand recognition value. So if you're looking for reputation and solid thing, I think, and also like the culture of PMI. IPMA, high quality, more expensive, more time consuming, but I love their very simple 4-level structure. I think it's easy to follow. I think they're sometimes unintentionally exclusive where they don't need to be and make it more difficult than they need to. Prince 2, I think is I don't want to put it down. It's a great quality process. It's the greatest asset of it. It's the one that's the most easy to get without a hassle, which I think is a legitimate thing. Sure. APM now has split off from IPMA, so I find their approach interesting as well. And then you've got the Scrum Alliance with their 25 or 30 different certifications where it's confusing. I find it highly irritating, and I'm speaking for the market here. And the other problem that we have in certification, and have you met Lee Lambert yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
I've seen him on videos and obviously know his position with NPMI.
He's a great guy. He was so kind to be virtually on one of our podcasts, and we talked about this as well. One of the things that hurts me a little bit is, and I have this conversation on ongoing, I'll have certain clients that will come to me and say, Mark, I need you to come in, and I've got a team of 14 people that need to be brought up to speed. Can you do fundamentals with them? Can you teach them, a pragmatic approach to and I said, yes, hands down, I can. With real life case studies, with examples, we'll make it understandable for you. And then they said, and can we turn that into a certification course? And I go, absolutely not.
No, that's a different story.
Because the way you need to train to pass certification and the way you need to train to practice it are not the same.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if this is it's a comment. I don't know if it's a legitimate critique because it takes different things, and the PMBOK is a much bigger scale of topics, so you have to approach it in a different way. But what hurts me a little bit, and I heard this from an end-to-end manager for a large German company that was building a factory that I trained, who said to me after it took him a long time to get the PMP, and I coached him through it. He says, he kind of said to me, not word for word, but almost in that tone, that it has no impact on what he's doing. There was no relevance, which hurts my heart because, in my opinion, I think the PMP did a lot for my project understanding, for understanding the scope of possibilities. And I still stand behind it. I think the PMBOK is a superior standard to understand project management, but I do understand how you can get lost in translation if you're going through 800 pages.
Or if you're just going for the certification, for the sake of the certification.
Yeah. So I think there's some work that I think PMI was kind of intimidated a little bit by this startup agile certifications popping out of the ground.
For a while. And they tried this, what they called at the time, micro certifications. Yeah. I've done a handful of them just to try them out.
Have you done the agile one?
I did one agile metrics, I think it was called.
I think I'm signed up for that, yeah.
I've done as well the organizational transformation one and the citizen developer thing. Yeah. Mixed quality. I thought the citizen developer was interesting. Well done, the organizational transformation. I think what they recognized is it was a dilution to the overall certification offerings, and that is why they've now kind of, I call it now demotion, to webinar courses, essentially, not calling them certifications, because one of the things that has been pushed over the last year by PMI is the concept of gold certifications, that the key certifications being offered CAPM as an entry level, PMP for mid-level, mid-career project managers. Then, from experience on PgMP, PfMP, and then the specialist certification around that. That they need to be high level. And if you look, for example, they've revamped the PMI ACP. They've revamped.
We both agree. We both have them. I thought the ACP was the best agile certification out there.
Not just from. All the flavors were in there. And that, I think, and I told my guys always, hey, don't do this Scrum Master course or this Product Owner course. Do the ACP.
I did the CSM, and you know what? It was great trainer, great venue. Fairly expensive. I've got lots of takeaways. I've got poker cards. I got a book. I got all sorts of give me's, which was great. The trainer was really sensational. He was one of the authors of the book. Lots of fun exercises. But after 2 days and then we took the exam in the course at the end of the course. And he says, and you can take the test agilely. And what does that mean? He says, we can ask each other questions and do poker card. And I'm like, no, I walked outside. He says, I don't need everybody's opinion. I want to take the test by myself. But there were 30 people in that course. And as a trainer, I'm really sensitive to, when I give a training, I want to make sure that I provide value and people are learning something. Yes. And the trainer, hands down, was great. But I knew for a fact that the 30 people that had taken these 2 days training and now had a CSM, maybe 2 of the people in that room actually knew how to be a Scrum Master. And I was one of them. And I didn't know how to do it because of the course. I knew how to do it because I'd been doing it for years.
Okay.
That's why I knew. I understood immediately that story points is a tricky subject, and there's workarounds. You can just substitute it with a duration and effort. There's no harm in it, right? But I think just proposing a bunch of new vocabulary and new shiny things that nobody understands to do doesn't serve the purpose. I mean, I think we already have that problem enough in project management that enough people talk about things but don't know how to do it. I don't think that helped it. So I think the certification landscape, I know that PMI is committed to it. I think PMI's strategy needs to continue to I think it's good to have micro something or other badges or whatever you want to call it, but they need to make sure that their core certifications are large and grand, large and in charge. And I hope that I think the objective falls on the trainer, because I'm also a certified trainer for PMP. I often have to translate the slides. I'll have to say, okay, you don't understand. Let me put it into a real life context, right?
Right.
But I often find that if I'm limited in time, I can't always do both. So I usually convince my clients is, listen, if you want to know how to do it, we'll do a how-to course, and if you want to be prepared for the PMP exam, we'll take a different one, which is a pity, actually. Yeah. I guess the only way to do that is to take more time. Let's talk about another thing that's dear to my heart. You are chapter president of PMI Chapter Austria.
I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants, and one of them.
Sure.
No, seriously. So for all the listeners here and viewers, I'm the 5th president of the Austria chapter. Next to me is the first
idiot.
No, come on.
No.
You made it happen. You started the whole thing, and I couldn't call myself chapter president, couldn't have the volunteer career I've had over the last years in the chapter if you wouldn't have started that one. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that as well. I'm also going to say one thing. I think volunteer work is based on giving and humility. I think it's important. And I don't think any of the volunteers really expect. I think you get plenty in return.
Yeah.
Connections, friendships, also business opportunities without violating any codes of conduct, just because people know you.
Yep.
It opens doors.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you something that's funny. When I originally started researching PMI, I was looking for somebody of your stature and of your background to start it.
Okay.
But
you did it.
But this is the funny thing about this. Back then in the late 90s, I couldn't find anybody.
Okay.
They all said, "Are you kidding? That's way too much work." And I'm going to say this about PMI, and I'll never forget them. I went through all the chartering process, and I was constantly looking for the senior. I was in contact with IBM, where I was talking to different people. I was talking to senior project managers at PMP from Baxter, really great guys. Yeah. And I was trying to get them all. There was some people I was talking to from CSC as well, and they all said, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And when PMI reached out to me and said, Mark, listen, what's going on with your chartering process? I go, listen, we've done all the paperwork. We have a concept. We have a business model. We have everything. We'd even talked to Professor Gairais at the time to see if we could cooperate and stuff. We had a very interesting conversation with him. And then PMI says, so what's the problem? I said, we don't have a chapter president. And they said, well, yeah, you do. And I go, who's that? And I go, you. Just do it. And that's one of my fall in love moments with PMI back in the day when I felt very much like a project management imposter. I had a lot of autodidactic experience. I'd worked in a mega million euro project, but I didn't have seniority back then. I was basically a project office manager. And the very fact that PMI gave me the opportunity and trusted me to take over that role honored me. And I must say, we did. I think the very fact that we were junior made us overcompensate as far as what we did locally. And I'm very, very thrilled that the chapter still exists and that it's in such good hands with somebody as much experience as you. And I wish you a lot of luck. Are there any particular? So let me ask you before we get to your what you have on the program. For those of you out there who are asking yourself questions, should I become a PMI chapter member? Should I volunteer for a chapter? What would be your argument for people who are considering it? Why should one be interested in the PMI chapter? Why does one want to become a PMI chapter president?
First of all, why would you want to become involved with the chapter itself? This is your opportunity to network, to influence, to participate in the project management community in Austria with like-minded people. And that already gives you a lot. We have Stammtisch or PM circles, as we call them. We're just switching the name away from Stammtisch. We have the events where you meet interesting people, where we have speakers presenting interesting topics, and we can talk about some of the upcoming speakers maybe later today. We give you the opportunity to participate in things like writing book like PMBOK, as one example, to coach young upcoming project managers. There's so much out there. And the number of opportunities that you get there. I mean, we have the luxury problem. There's so much stuff we could do if we would have sufficient people. We have now 35 to 40 people saying that one base. We're onboarding at the moment if you want. So once they're fully onboarded, we will be around 40. But there's a lot of stuff we can do and even more. So as a PMI member, so not chapter member, general member, you get access to a ton of PMI literature, the PMBOK for free, all the other books, a lot of literature. You get access to stuff like PMI Infinity, the ChatGPT based chat LLM fed with all the IP of PMI, access to courses, webinars on AI and project management, what have you, a lot of things for the value of that one. In addition to that one, there's a chapter membership. So the local one, in this case, Austria, and by the way, we have around 300 chapters worldwide. Austria now is one of them. And again, as a member of the chapter, you can participate in all the events we're doing, which is fine. And then if you still don't have enough, you can become volunteer and you organize these things. You can get deeper into as well PMI intern conferences. You probably remember these exchanges, part of writing teams, coaching. You organize events. And then if you still don't have enough, you can become a board member. And that is then you lead a team. And if that is then not enough, then presidency is probably for you.
This is an old saying that you don't hear so much anymore, but I think it's still true because it's a golden statement. Great ideas or great organizations think global, but exist and act local.
Yes.
PMI is a great organization, but understanding that it theoretically has an office. I don't think they even have the office there in King of Prussia somewhere in Pennsylvania. It doesn't do much for you. I mean, it's a great organization, has a lot of literature, it can help me with certification, but if I want to feel a community of practice always has to be local.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do this, but I remember back in the day when we were a young chapter, some of the bigger chapters like London and Germany Frankfurt would usually, with Thomas Valenta, we used to, great guy, they would come to me and we had a big mouth. We were good, but we always had great ideas and people
we were
like,
Austrian.
Yeah, we were rolling their eyes a little bit at us, but they often in the conversation, the standard conversation between chapter presidents would be, so how many members do you have?
How many members? How many volunteers?
And I used to love that question because I would kick everybody, not literally, but conceptually in the nuts by saying, I don't know, and I don't care. And people would say, but you're violating your... I said, you need to ask me the more pertinent question is how many project management interested people I have in my database. It's 5,000. How many members do you have? Because one of the reasons that made us want to create PMI back then is, I mean, there was a well and healthy PMA organization, well established within Austria. But I remember when I reached out to them as a junior project manager, they were like, "Who are you? We're not interested." And I was like, "This is exclusive. It's not inclusive." Yep. And I believe that a community of practice, and you said it before, Andy, so you're in that spirit. You said, listen, project management is a multi-generational thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's not just the old farts that think they know it. We need to have we want those students, we want those project assistants, we want those people who say, you know, I want to be a project manager. And that's the spirit that we back then brought into the chapter. I think most chapters live that spirit. Of course, the one of the metrics is your membership, and I know that Austria in the meantime already has a substantial membership as well.
With actually a record at the end of the year.
Yeah. What I find a little bit of a pity is that PMI needs to reiterate this as well. It used to be one of the metrics that PMI internationally used to share. I think that through the different changes of leadership, the new leadership didn't quite understand how important that is. It's just as important as how many PMP members we have. The health of PMI as an international community is contingent not only on its membership, but how many people it speaks to, how many people it certifies. It's the stakeholder concept.
Yes.
And I think it's important. And I think if you live that spirit locally, people naturally understand why they should become a member.
Yeah. For example, we do academic outreach is one of the things we're doing here in Vienna, for example, with the BFI Fachhochschule.
Yeah.
And we have volunteers presenting there, having lectures more as well, and giving courses there, and we're collaborating closely with them. That is one thing. We work as well with other academic institutions, so it is important to bring the new people in. This is the future, and again, the offering, and this is something I've seen over the last years, PMI getting their head around, that they have present the whole journey from start of project management, being in school or at university, or as a very young professional, through the mid-level PMP, which was usually bread and butter, and then as well to later stages, how to support the different needs in the different, because they are different.
And like I said, I'm 100% behind the chapter concept, and I think PMI needs to learn also to promote that a little bit more. They used to in the past, because in reality, on a local level, you can have a big impact. I mean, I think the biggest highlight during my time as chapter president is the last symposium we did. We did a symposium in Vienna where we had 36 expert tracks from different companies throughout Austria and beyond. We had 1,200 attendees. We had 7 expert things. We had Vranitsky as a keynote speaker. We had Tom DeMarco as a keynote speaker. We had the Huber Boom as a final speaker. We had awards. And we had 1,200 people there over 2 days. And at that time, I know that the European Symposium is large enough. Yeah. They had a European Symposium and I think 90% of the attendees were from Austria. Mm-hmm. And not far away in Budapest, they had the European PMI Symposium that had 500 people in attendance, 90% not from Hungary. So that was the contrast. I think it's changed a little bit. Yeah. And I'm not doing this to be mean-spirited or something. I'm just saying I'm 100% advocate. I believe that the real power of PMI is at its grassroots. I think the roots nourish the tree. And I wish you lots of success and luck. I'm going to get more involved now, or at least as a member, and start attending meetings again. I've been away for many years, but I'm back in Austria, and I'll definitely come and see how your baby and my baby is doing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, it's the 25th year that this is up and running. So we have an anniversary to celebrate, and you've been 11 years out of the 25 years. Yeah. So. Yeah. Nowadays, with term limited, things that will go. We've got more farmers, so the maximum I can get to is 4 years, 2 times 2 years.
I think I once overheard the that time CEO of PMI, not in a nice way, when he saw me kind of smile and said, "That's the Emperor of Austria." I'm like, I didn't like that term. That's not what I was going for. But yeah. So. I wish you lots of luck, and you've got an event coming up on the 27th, which I'll be attending. You've got a great guest coming there as well.
Yes, there is Americo Pinto. He's the Managing Director and Global Director of the PMO Global Alliance, which has been integrated into PMI last year, which has been the biggest organization globally to drive the interest and as well content for PMOs. This is not part of PMI. Actually, 2 days ago, on the 4th, the first PMO practice guide was published by PMI together with the PMI-PMOCP certification, social certification as well with the training course. So basically, they're firing on all cylinders on that subject. America is basically the mastermind behind that one. From Brazil, great speaker. I've seen him multiple times, so really great speaker. And he's doing his first presentation after publishing of the practice guide of the new certification. For the first time, he will speak in Austria.
How long is he here for?
A day.
Okay.
A day or so. And, but if you look for guests, maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah. I definitely want to come see him in person, but maybe it would be an opportunity also to, if he has time though, maybe to also invite him into the podcast, but we'll see if we can make it
with him. And I think he's one, if not the top speaker when it comes to PMO and the future of PMO in the world. And we're lucky to have him here in Austria.
Look forward to that.
We will have that one at Frequentis. Frequentis is hosting on the 27th of February in the evening. So you can sign up via the PMI Austria website. It will be a good one. It will be great.
Dirk, it was a pleasure having you in my podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good work you do. Thanks for sharing your expertise. We're going to be putting Dirk's information down into the information. So if you want to reach out to him over LinkedIn, become a chapter president, not a chapter president, a chapter member, whether it is in your local city or in Austria. I'm sure you can always
volunteer.
Volunteer.
Welcome.
Come to the events and let's continue being that community of practice. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.